Welcome to This Is My Journey. We know all our students have a health story that is worth sharing and learning from. I am so excited for these courageous people to share their stories of courage, strength, vulnerability, and resilience, specifically in areas of mental health. I first want to introduce Colin Joni, who will kick it off for us. The title of his talk is Light at the End of the Tunnel.
When you pour water and oil into the same glass, how the oil and the water separate. I felt like I was the oil and that I was perpetually different from everybody else. And it was really embedded in me from a young age that whether people liked me or not depended on the external things that I had. Like if I was skinny, if I was athletic, if I was funny, that decided whether you were going to like me or not. My internal characteristics and my character assets had nothing to do with any of it. And also when I was a kid, I was bullied a lot, like really badly, because I was a chubby kid. So my brain told me that I wasn't liked because I was fat. And I can't point to any one thing as the root cause of my eating disorder, but I think that definitely had an impact in it. So I basically continued like that for years. And when I was 12, that 2009, it was absolutely the worst year of my life. My grandmother died in September, and that was the first death I'd ever experienced in my family, and it hit me really hard. And then 3 months after that, my mom died, and it really, really messed me up. And it put me into this place of, like I really wanted people to accept me and like me, but those events just made me isolated. I didn't want to leave my house. I didn't want to talk to any of you, but I still craved your attention. But I didn't have the courage to leave my house and go talk to you guys. But I was still grabbing onto those external things to try to, prove myself and seem like I'm worthy of your friendship. And I'm happy I'm not like that today, but I'll get to that. But my head was always just really noisy, and I felt these constant feelings of inadequacy. I was contemplating suicide from a pretty young age, and there was one thing that I found that worked for me. And I was 12 when I tried it, and it's called alcohol. And a year after I got introduced to alcohol, I got introduced to weed. And um, around the age of 14, drinking and smoking became a daily thing. And I was smoking every day from the age of 14 on. And from the age of 14 to around 20, I don't think I had more than 15 sober days in all those years. What started off as self-medicating and trying to shut my brain off ended up becoming a completely new beast of its own. And this full-blown alcoholism emerged in me, and it completely consumed my entire life. And in the middle of all this, I was still looking to try to prove myself to people. And as I said, I thought that I needed to be athletic and skinny to prove myself to you guys. So I started playing sports, and I decided to take lacrosse very seriously. And I ended up committing to the University of Michigan, which is a D1 school, my sophomore year of high school. And that was all I needed. My ego was complete. That was all I needed for all you guys to like me. But no one liked me any more or any less. It was all the same. So I went through high school. Lacrosse was really my identity. I didn't identify with anything else besides that. I still didn't recognize all those internal qualities. And that was my identity. And, I get out to Michigan. I graduated high school in 2017. I get to Michigan, and a month into being out there, I get diagnosed with a heart condition, and I get told I can never play lacrosse ever again. And that was the only healthy coping skill I possessed, and it was now out the window. And the other coping skill that I possessed, the less healthy one, was drinking and smoking. And I immediately reverted back to the only thing that I knew, which was those two things. And it progressed to an extent that I didn't even know was possible, honestly. I became a morning drinker, a midday drinker, a nightly drinker. I would drink, pass out, and towards the end of my drinking, I had about 4 seizures from alcohol withdrawals in a 5-month period. And one of my people on the call here remembers that very well, and it gives me the chills thinking about it, and it makes me choked up. But yeah, I ended up having to take some time off from school. I had to go to rehab a couple different times. And I ended up taking 2 semesters off from BC to find a solution to my problem. And I finally stumbled across that solution in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, I'm not going to get too much into that because I know this is not an AA meeting, but finding a connection with God has truly saved my life, and it has given me purpose. And I know that today I'm uniquely qualified to help other people who are struggling with alcohol, who are struggling with eating disorders, who are struggling with mental health struggles. Like I've walked that walk, so I can help them get through that. And right now, I'm not confused as to what my purpose is in my life, and it's to help other people get through those obstacles that just seem insurmountable at first. Um, and I mean, life isn't a straight line, obviously, and I've had ups and downs. Like I had a relapse last March, and it was horrible. Like I reached a brand new bottom in 2 days of drinking, but I needed that to learn and to get to the place where I'm at right now. And today I can say that I'm content and that I'm happy, and I'm only content and happy because I'm growing. Every day is a day where I can grow, and every day is a day when I can talk to God, and I can ask him. I call him him, even though it's more of an it. I ask him, what do you want me to do today, God? Like, how can I best perform your work right now? Like, guide my thoughts, guide my actions, and help me go with you. And just trying to deepen that connection with God and seek him in new ways it's been life-changing. It's completely changed my entire life and my outlook on things. And if you were to tell me a year and a half ago that I was going to be happy and content and sober for over 6 months today, then I would think that you're absolutely insane, and I would assume that you were high on some type of drug, and I would ask for one of the drugs that you were taking. But all those things are true today, and I am happy, but it's a continuous process. I have my ups and downs, but overall, my trend is on an upward path. I got a positive slope going on in my life right now, if that makes any sense. And I made up a quote, and I literally made this up, and I think it's pretty awesome, and I should copyright it. But sometimes you have to spend some time in the darkness to make the light a lot more obvious. And that, my experience, like, it's a perfect example of that. So I probably talked for too long, but thank you for having me here. I'm really, really so grateful to be here. So thank you.
Next up, we have Ashley Antico, and the title of her talk is Non-Linear. Take it away, Ashley.
Hi, everyone. My entire life, I have been a really happy, bubbly person, wonderfully extroverted, never without a smile. I claim that person as who I am. I'm really proud of that person, but that doesn't mean that it's the whole story. Right around my freshman year of high school, my mental health struggle started. It wouldn't be for many more years that I would have the words, the conviction, or the courage to talk about what was going on. But it's clear to me now that that's when it started. I can almost pinpoint the exact moment that I started feeling everyone's eyes on me. And truthfully, I don't feel like they've ever taken them off. High school was not an easy time for me, but thankfully I gained some lifelong friends and some confidence to go with them during my later years. However, when I started at BC, it was like all that progress disappeared. And suddenly I was plunged headfirst back into this like hurricane of madness in my head. I wouldn't venture to the dining halls alone, sometimes going hours and hours without eating because I didn't have someone to go with me, and thus I started losing weight. But in my mind, the skinnier that I was, the more people would like me. So I prided myself on these pounds shed as a result of the anxiety-induced fasts. I don't think I went to a single event alone my freshman year, and for months on end, this voice in my head wouldn't stop screaming. I questioned every single action that I made or someone else made. I overanalyzed every single decision before and afterwards as if it was social life or death. And I never stopped second guessing myself. I couldn't even get up to go to the bathroom during class because I felt everyone's eyes and what I perceived as judgment. It wouldn't be till my sophomore year of college, nearly 5 years after my journey started, that I would be affirmed in knowing that I have social anxiety. My sophomore year here at BC started out great. I had never felt so connected to my friends, comfortable with myself, and really just feeling very at home here. However, midway through October, I sank into a really unfamiliar depressive episode, the first that I can remember, and I wasn't quite sure why. It took weeks for me to come to terms with what was going on and to take the steps into university counseling to see if someone could help. I went to UCS that November, and I had a 30-minute conversation that changed my life. I brought my situation to the table, added in that I suspected I had social anxiety, and left with a clear mind on a high of finally being affirmed. And that was just the beginning of my journey. My second semester, I started going to counseling regularly, both in individual and group sessions. I started practicing the hard task of working against the negative thought patterns, and I started writing all the good things for my day, big and small, in a gratitude journal. I was determined to quiet the negative voice inside my head with my own positive one, telling me that I could do this. I'm working on honesty right now, so I'll tell you that although I made a lot of progress, my path has not been linear. The moment we were told we had to go home this past March, frankly, my body and mind could not handle it. And it threw me into a panic attack that honestly still terrifies me to this day. But going home also meant that I had an opportunity to grow in a space that I was comfortable in. As an extrovert, quarantine sounds like the last place that I would ever want to be. However, as an extrovert with social anxiety, it provided me a space where I could get my social interaction in set doses, where I could monitor, reflect, and learn without needing to implement it in real time. I grew so much in these last 6 months that despite the clearly global challenges that have been really heavy on my heart, I'm really grateful for the pause that it had on my life. I started walking every day and forged a strong bridge between my mental and my physical health. I practiced and got in the habit of intuitive eating, which has changed my relationship with food and my body, while I learned that being authentic is a lot more important than being skinny. I read articles and studies and one fantastic book all about social anxiety to understand more what was going on inside my head and equip myself with more things in my toolkit for when I'm struggling. And I started journaling with a purpose, which has created space for an incredible transformation. I feel like I'm finally learning who I am and who I want to be through purposeful actions and reflection. I still have plenty of not so great days, long nights with rambling thoughts, and things to work on, like setting boundaries, standing up for my own needs, and opening up to my family about my struggles. But I feel like I'm headed in the right direction. I want to end with a passage from my journal that I wrote a couple weeks ago after coming back to school. I'm proud of myself for how far I've come. I feel like I've had a lot of growth these last few months and really had a great opportunity to recenter myself when I was home over quarantine. I'm working on vulnerability and honesty, but this journal is definitely helping. I'm working actively to recognize and talk back to the negative thoughts caused with the anxiety. And I'm feeling more authentic, true to myself, and self-assured. It's always going to be a work in progress, but I really am proud of where I am now and for how far I've come. Thank you.
Next up, we have Amanda Greco, and the title of her talk is I Am Whole.
Health is a journey, not a destination. Journeys have peaks and valleys. I'm aware of this fact in concerns to the definition of the word journey. However, I used to try so hard in the past to not accept a low in my personal wellness. The BC community similarly can portray an attitude of having it all together at all times. This concept is simply just not true or humanely possible, and when you strive toward this unrealistic ideal, it is exhausting, to say the least. My high school and early college self was very much optimistic and positive, always finding the shining light in a situation and bouncing back from physical and social challenges. I still find this to be the case, but I would add an asterisk that makes the statement hold more truth. I used to think resiliency was overcoming challenges right as they arose, pretending the situation did not even get a chance to bring me down. When my relationship with my roommate, who had been my best friend at BC, drastically changed over the second semester of my sophomore year, I tried to rationalize and apologize for anything I may have done or said, I lost my spot, sorry. Or been unaware of to fix the gap that has grown between us. I overly tried to please her so that we would talk like we used to and kept an exterior happy demeanor to convince myself that I was okay. Internally, the toll was building up, and eventually by the end of the semester, I realized by trying to stay super positive, I was not being my authentic self, and I really was not feeling good about the situation. I accepted that I could not control that we had grown apart, but I still did not allow myself to say that I emotionally was not all right from losing that friendship. The following summer, after that semester, my grandma became ill with pneumonia. I went to the hospital and rehab that she was in and out of for 7 weeks with my mom and her brother and her sister, held her hand, and retaught her how to do deep breaths to keep her oxygen levels high. The eventual loss of her was the tipping point for me. All of the times I thought I was being resilient, but really was pushing away any lows rather than giving them time to process, imploded on me. My normal sense of identity, filled with life and positivity, was intruded with negative thought patterns and constant anxiety. At points that summer, I did not feel anything at all and was convinced I was dying, even though I had no physical ailment. I recognized and accepted I was not okay and asked for help, seeing a psychologist. On my path back from that summer, I have learned that resiliency is found in keeping on and moving forward. You can be in a low for a time, and in actually recognizing quote unquote negative emotions, you will grow and be set free to also feel moments of overwhelming happiness, peace, and gratitude. I'm thankful for my journey and the true loving people that have brought me joy when I needed it the most along the way. Appreciate the moment, the good, the bad, and everything in between. It is okay to not be okay. Recognizing all my emotions and working through my anxiety daily is what has made me whole and ultimately happy.
Next up, we have Rachel Goldsborough, and the title of her talk is The Little Runner That Could.
I'm Rachel. It's a really dorky title. I'm sorry. I couldn't come up with anything better. If there is one constant in my life in terms of what I consider a part of my health journey, it's running. There are people that just see exercise as hopping on a treadmill or going outside to push themselves through a grueling run. But typically you don't hear anyone say that they actually enjoy running. However, I do, and if for some reason I'm not finding joy from it or find significant shifts in speed or mileage, I know it must reflect other significant changes in my life or health. Over the summer, I was going through one of those lull periods where my mileage was less than it was, and my speed was subpar, for me anyway, compared to when I was at school in the earlier months of 2020. While I recognized that a new environment in the extreme heat of the summer could contribute to this, I also had to recognize that my body type somewhat shifted, and that brought on a world of other health reflections. I struggled with an eating disorder and forms of disordered eating from the age of 11, and only recently found a road to recovery a couple of years ago. However, this recent summer has been dedicated to a more full mental recovery and confronting a lot of the old and perpetuated negative body cognitions I'm pressured from society to keep. At school, stress and a myriad of troubling events sparked an alarming spike in the number of miles I was running during the spring semester, and an unprecedented increase in speed, a somatic bodily reaction to a world of emotions I didn't know how to properly handle. In addition, a busy schedule in mind meant food took a back seat. Combined, my weight dropped to what people would consider a typical skinny runner's body, one I was used to having in the past, having been a cross-country runner in high school. The difference was that this time it made me slightly uneasy that I wasn't taking care of myself in the right ways. But as my mind turned inward toward what I was dealing with emotionally at school, that skinny runner's body, a body I knew so well, made me feel safe from the outside world. When I was forced to come home this spring, my diet and running changed, meaning so did my body. While I was still focusing on developing a healthier relationship with my emotions and mental conflicts, I was forced to deal with my physical health changes as a kind of double-edged sword. Fighting to be comfortable in my own skin whilst dealing with so much extra attention from others and their recognition of my body more closely fitting society's perpetuated ideal. For most, this would be flattering. For me, having had an eating disorder, I learned to find comfort in a lack of attention and was unsure how to feel about so many eyes on my physical appearance. Thus, my desire to turn inward toward my relationship with my mind and soul and turn away from physical exertion as an outlet paralleled how much attention I could expect to get from others. A perfect dissonance between people's generally positive outlook on my body and my struggle to figure out if I was maintaining a healthy relationship with my body as I focused on other aspects of health. Perhaps it's that dissonance that will help me focus on what matters for me in this next phase. What I care about most going forward is discovering how the word strong fits into my health narrative. I've always wanted to be a strong, independent individual, but I suppose I'd never considered what that necessarily meant. All that had ever made me feel truly strong and in control for so many years was being able to put on a pair of running shoes and leave my issues far, far behind. But it was never enough to save me from the pain that would inevitably catch up. Now I believe the word strong can be applied in different ways in terms of health. It can mean mental resilience, physical strength, forgiveness, and more. I want to be completely comfortable with my body wherever it happens to fall on the spectrum of body types and shapes. I want to find joy in everything I do. I want to be able to handle stress and other overwhelming emotions as they come to me. I want to be capable of letting go of anger and forgiving others when I feel wronged. We are all struggling, and some people are closer to addressing what has hurt them than others. I want to be able to reframe how I perceive myself and focus more on the valuable things I can do rather than on what I fear may be lacking. It's a one-on-one behavior change conversation with myself. Looking at my past and what makes me feel valuable now and using that to find what matters most to me and the patience I have to have in order to bring about good change. Now, I don't want to run aimlessly. I want to sprint toward a brighter future.
We have Peyton Marshall, who will now share her story, and the title is called Living to Learn.
So I've shared this in wellness coaching C's before, and it's been interesting to see how my vision and my synopsis of my health journey has changed since I've been a freshman. But I think, like a lot of people who've spoken, I started dealing with a lot of heavy stuff at a pretty young age. Around like 6th grade, I definitely developed a lot of body image problems, but even more than that was I dealt with a lot of depression and anxiety. And I think the depression was the most pressing issue. And a lot of that was because I had so much empathy as a child that, like, my teachers would always write every year that, like, I would get upset when things happened to other people and it would really hurt me. And I just couldn't see anyone suffering. And just learning about all the things, like middle school, you kind of start to learn about, like, just all the horrible things that happen in the world and suffering people go through. And I think as people started shielding things from me less as I was growing up, it weighed on me really heavily. So kind of those big problems in the world that, like, no individual person can solve. So that definitely contributed to a lot of depression I was going through. And I was definitely very high functioning. So it was something that I dealt with on and off throughout middle school and high school. Some periods where I would be doing really great, and then some periods where I felt completely paralyzed and really couldn't do anything. And that was really tough too, because I think a lot of people really didn't understand it. Why I sometimes would be so happy and bubbly and good, and then other times, you know, it would really hit me and I wouldn't show up to hang out with my friends, and, you know, or wouldn't feel okay to go to a class. A lot of teachers and friends were really not understanding about that. And then it made me question, you know, myself too, like, is this real? Or am I just being dramatic? And the answer to that is that it was definitely real. And I did years of therapy and self-work. And it all kind of came to a head my senior year of high school, because I was really putting it on the back burner. My mental health was just not the priority, because I think I felt like, okay, if I knew that I could fix it and there was something that I could do to be completely okay all the time, I would do it. But there was no clear answer right ahead of me. So it was just like, you know what, I'll just ignore it. Maybe see a therapist here and there, but, you know, until something comes to a head, I'll just ignore that. And I, by senior year, had also been pretty reluctant to try medications because I had one bad experience when I was in 7th grade, but I went on another medication that really, really messed me up really bad, made things a lot worse, which was scary. And I got to the point where I was so depressed and so anxious, I couldn't go to any classes or do anything. Like I just was in my bed. And that was horrible. I did my work from home and I maintained good grades in my classes, but my guidance counselors actually threatened to let me not graduate because I was turning things in from home, but I wasn't attending classes, and they had a rule that if you had more than 5 unexcused absences, you would flunk out. So that was really fun, and actually like involved my parents coming in and like a lawyer, and anyways, they ended up making special accommodations for me that I could take tests in class, but during regular class days I could just study things on my own because I was so depressed and anxious. So it all worked out and I graduated, but I was dealing with a lot, so I didn't apply to colleges, which was also a really interesting thing because I was so involved in my small community that people were really shocked when I was like, I'm not going to college next year. But I figured out the medication stuff, and then I was feeling better, not in a panic, crisis mode anymore. And I woke up one day and I was like, you know what? I want to do something really cool with this year. And I decided to travel for a year. And so I went backpacking in East Africa for half a year, and spent a lot of time volunteering, living without running water, without electricity in a lot of the places I was in Uganda and Rwanda and Tanzania. Worked at a special needs orphanage, lived with them for a while. I worked at an NGO for kids whose parents had died of HIV, and then the kids obviously had HIV as well. So I did stuff like that, and I didn't bring my phone to Tanzania with me. And that was really great because I wanted to really refocus on, and this is where I came up with the name of the talk on the learning to live and living to learn. I wanted to get rid of all the outside stuff, and all the outside pressures that made me feel like I have to do this, this, and this. And I wanted to really get to the root of what's important in life. And often those are the little things. So that really helped me connect with that, human connection, exploring the world, learning, all of that. And it really reshaped my values. And then I spent the spring doing a similar thing. I lived in Peru by myself. I did bring a phone that time, but I didn't go on it a lot. I didn't have a plan, so it was only for emergencies. But I learned after East Africa that I probably should have had a phone for safety reasons, but just taxis and things. But anyways, so I went to Peru, did a yoga teacher training. That really helped me as well. Think a lot about deeper meanings in life and what I really wanted my life to be about and my underlying values. And I think that whole year was very centering for me. And when I got to BC, I was in a much better place. I was still dealing with things, and I've put in a lot of self-work to get to the place where I am, where I can honestly say I'm not dealing and haven't for a long time dealt with any mental health problems. And that really fires me up and makes me excited to help other people, because I think I always felt like, oh, this is something I'm going to deal with forever. And I've gotten to a point where I've done a lot of work to be where I am. And that's pretty much my health journey. So
I thought I would share quickly my own brief health narrative, and then we can take some questions there too. So it was not until my freshman year that I began to seriously consider my health and my relationship with food and stress. Before, I had always been an emotional eater, and fast food and junk food were my go-to for dealing with stress and emotions before college. My self-esteem was low, and my body image had not yet started its journey to self-love. In addition to not having much of an education surrounding personal health and well-being, I was intimidated by exercise and viewed sports and the gym as a world with no space for me. This all shifted in a more positive direction following my freshman year of college, when I studied the philosophy of food during a May term course in Italy. I lived on a sustainable farm and prepared food from scratch with a group of peers that I grew close with, as we established both a connection with the source of our food and with each other. I realized that our relationship with food is one of the most intimate relationships we have. And just like our relationships with people, it is most vibrant when we truly invest in it, when we know where our food comes from, and when we know that it is good. I now view eating as a more profound experience that allows for the outside world to come into our own bodies, become part of our bodies, and contribute either positively or negatively to our growth and well-being. After that summer, I decided to incorporate one healthy habit into my life each summer, a ritual I refer to as self-love summer, which has further contributed to my personal health narrative. I learned to own my experience and embrace the things I knew would contribute positively to my life. I started with skincare, spending more time outdoors and exploring my faith and identity. And most recently, I spent a summer earning my certification as a yoga instructor, much like Peyton. Yoga has taught me that our bodies and minds are always in a healing process, and we must continually work to bring balance to all areas of our life in order to feel peace and self-love both on and off of the mat. I love the idea that personal health is a combination of the physical, mental, and spiritual, because my experience has most definitely reflected that just one area being out of balance can affect all other areas. Thanks.